to the February 15th edition of the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series, brought to you by the National Urban League. I'm your host, Kenneth L. Johnson, president of the Harlem, New York-based diversity recruitment firm, East Coast Executives. Welcome. Please jump in the chat. Tell us where you're from. If this is your first time joining us, we appreciate it. The Digital Career Success Series, DCSS, is a professional development series that helps members of our Urban League Young Professional chapters and other diverse job seekers develop new skill sets that will enhance their careers through digital platforms such as webinars, Facebook, and Instagram Live. The goal is to provide an opportunity for professional development right from one's computer. If you want more, visit us at nuljobsnetwork.com. I see we got some people in the chat. Oh, of course, Philly's in here. I see DC is in here. I know we're penning people in the chat here. Ohio, we are out there for the National Urban League Conference this summer. So please come over to Cleveland and see us. I see we got Greenville, South Carolina, Sacramento, California. I guess that's kind of close to where Octavia is at, a little. New Orleans, Louisiana. Shout out to y'all. I saw my Eagles there in the Super Bowl. But look, let's just start the show. We're going to get started by welcoming our guest, Octavia, to the platform. Octavia, welcome to the Digital Career Success Series.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Kenneth. I'm joining from Los Angeles today.
We know you're out in California. Here's rain today, but you are smiling, bringing the sunshine. We appreciate it. Please tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Octavia Goredema, and I think the through line for all the work that I do is that I'm really, really passionate about enabling others to do their best work. I started my career working in public relations and communications. I made a pivot to become a career coach, and now I'm a tech founder. I'm the founder of Fire Memos. Our platform enables you to record and recognize your achievements at work. I'm the author of this book, Threat Push Pivot. It's a career coaching guide for underrepresented women in the workplace. And we have a chapter that's dedicated to how to pull off a career change successfully. And I'm also the host of the Audible original series, How to Change Careers with Octavia Goredema.
Man, we're so excited to have you here today. You are in the right place because we are talking career pivots today. So with that being said, I'm going to bring our other guest on. Kason, how's it going today, my friend?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks so much for having me. I can't complain. Really happy to talk about this topic near and dear to my heart. So how you guys doing today?
We're doing really good. Before we start talking about the topic, let's talk about you a little, man. You've really accomplished, looking at your skill set for a week now, and I've been amazed at the work you're doing out here. Please share with the audience about your work.
I appreciate it. Hey, everybody. Kason Morris. I've been in the talent and org performance space for about almost 2 decades. I currently work as a future of work executive in life sciences. But what's unique about me is that I've navigated my career. I've made 10 strategic pivots across 6 different industries. I am also the author of the Life Work Revolution, because for me, in the work that I do today, I've noticed a pattern around how people really have to take agency in relation to how they approach leveraging their career and really pushing their lives forward. And those principles have led me to where I am today. And I'm all about giving back, both as an executive but also as a coach and a business owner.
Man, we appreciate you being here today. You know, I'm looking at the 10 purpose-driven promotions and things of that nature that you speak about. It seems like there's some purpose around pivot. Everyone's pivot's a little different. And I'd like to kind of, I guess, start there. Let's just start talking about, you know, the different types of career pivots that people make out here. You guys want to jump in?
Yeah, of course. And that's exactly right, Kenneth. Everyone's pivot is different. Even if there's something that you're aspiring to do and you're talking to someone who's forged a career in that path, your journey is going to be different. And one of the things that I've seen through people that I've coached and supported with my book and my work is that there are a number of different ways you can pull this off as well. Sometimes you might be doing this as what I call a parallel track. It might be that you have a 9 to 5 and then after hours, you're exploring a new opportunity and testing that out. Or it could be that you're actually making what I call a gradual shift. And that's when you're taking a very intentional steps that will move you closer and closer towards something that's going to take you in a new and exciting direction. And then there's the other option, which a number of people are considering or in the middle of right now, which is when you literally are making a new turn, completely different direction, leaving behind what you have done in the past and starting new.
You know, as we speak about just mastering the art of the career pivot, Kason, as we're looking at everyone's pivot being different, can you kind of maybe drill down a little bit on how people can make the decision to want to pivot, but then to act on that plan?
Yeah, it's a great point, and the whole idea that a pivot isn't just a move; it's really a strategy. So when you think about it, most people, and when I deal with clients, most people pivot reactively, like when they're unhappy, they're feeling burnt out, or they're pushed. But the smarter ones are those who actually pivot proactively before they actually have to make that move. So it isn't really just about changing jobs. And the way I try to frame it is it's the idea that it's a skill. It's knowing when to move, where to move, and how to position yourself for success. And there's really three key strategies that I kind of look at. Is that it's about knowing, where you want to go before you start to make that move. So it's about getting really good at looking at trends, understanding where some of your gaps are, and experimenting with opportunities today that are low risk. And then one of the unique ideas I bring to that for people that I work with as well is the idea that you have to build your career leverage, and this idea of skills as currency, because your skills are what will actually allow you to make the kinds of pivots that you may want to make. So it's really about knowing how to leverage your rare and valuable and durable skills. And then once you have an understanding what those things are, it's about using that leverage to create your own opportunities. And that's the kind of power cycle that I help guide people through when they think about like the future of what's next. Because right now, change is our only constant in the world of work and life. And when you start using your career and skills as leverage, it opens up a whole new world for you.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about leverage. So it's really not, it's about leverage. It's not really about starting over. I think a lot of times people look at career pivots and they think it's a complete start over, but you're focusing in on the skills that you already have. Octavia, do you want to speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think one thing that's also really important to remember is that you've got to be ready to bet on yourself before anybody else will. And often when you get that next opportunity, whatever that is, that's a lagging indicator of what has actually come before. There's going to be so much invisible work that nobody else is going to see. You've got to be ready to really talk about what you want to do next and to think about the skills that you can harness and talk about those things with confidence. Be ready to convey that conviction in terms of your potential. No one else will have any idea of what you are capable of until it's done. Nobody will. And the reason why this is so important is when we're in transition, we have to find people who will be ready to believe in us. It can be so easy to put someone in a box. Oh, Octavia does this. Oh, Octavia's done that. No one else can see what Octavia's about to do next. And the same applies for you. So you've got to start with that inner leverage that you have. And that comes down to really owning who you are, being proud of everything that you can bring to the table and not letting go of that. And then if you start from that place, that energy is infectious. People get drawn towards that. Now, there's so many other steps that go into this, of course, and Kason and I are going to talk about some of those things as we go. But, I've been in that place where I wasn't where I wanted to be yet. And I didn't realize in that moment the leverage I actually had was my energy and my self-determination, that commitment and that readiness to bet on myself. And so that, I think, is the first thing that we have to harness.
That's a different type of skill set there. I think typically when people think about making a career pivot, they look at some hard skills that they bring to the table. But it seems like you're honing in on maybe, I don't want to call them soft skills, but definitely transferable skills that you have that allow you to, what is it, prep, push, pivot? Is that what we're talking about?
It's called grit and resilience. And you're going to need that not just at the beginning, not just in the middle, but you're going to need that after you have pulled off this pivot as well. You know, there is so much that goes into this entire process, and it all starts with you. And then people catch up, right? And there'll be people that will help you along the way. There'll be people that'll be part of your journey. There'll be people that will give you that perhaps big break, but it all starts with you.
Yeah.
You know, Kason, we're talking about not going at it alone. I want to let everybody know in the audience, this is the Digital Career Success Series. We have Octavia Goredema, Kason Morris here talking about career moves and career pivots, but you shouldn't go at it alone. So let's talk a little bit about this. Let's kind of explain to our audience why pivoting is rarely a solo endeavor.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, have you ever heard of the term, you know, your network is your net worth? It really is a very, very true statement, because when you think about the opportunity to pivot, whether it's to learn a new skill, get into a new area, whatever your drivers are for your pivot, there's usually a community around you that can help propel you forward. One of the things that I put forth is the idea of low risk experimentation. It's like, how do you set the bar low in relation to, like, what are these things that are low risk and opportunities that will allow you to build relationships, because that relationship capital is the thing that can open windows of opportunities for you. So I think that's a really, really critical piece of the puzzle when you start making a pivot. It's having that radical curiosity, and making sure that when you have that radical curiosity, that you're able to speak to others and experiment and explore. And as a result of that, you tend to build a lot more confidence in your capability. And to something that Octavia said earlier, was the idea that it's really an internal shift that you have to make. It's about your mindset, and it's about that resilience and creating that safe space. So when you feel like you're alone in doing that, like you have to go do it on your own, having a community, having those curiosity conversations, it allows you to build that confidence that will take you to the next place that you want to go.
You know, let's back up a little. Let's talk about this relationship capital. Where are we creating this capital? How are we investing in others and others investing in us so we can grow? Tell me a little more about that.
Well, I actually love this conversation because it's a really important reminder that I have realized, and I see it play out in real time. Often when we're looking to do something next, and we're looking at our connections and thinking about, okay, who's doing the thing, right? Who's doing it well? Who can we talk to? That's important. But please, please, please do not forget to talk to people who are around you, even if they're not directly connected to what you want to do next. And this is why. You do not know who those people know. This played out for me just last week. I had a conversation with someone who was telling me about a career change she wanted to make. I don't work in that sector, but I talked to her about how she could plan for that. Next week, the following week, I saw a post that related to exactly what she wants to do from someone in my network. And I was able to share that.
Sure.
And it's just one example, but it's played out so many times for me personally. A door has opened because somebody knew about what I was looking for, or what I was excited about, or just what I was planning to do next. So we cannot be shy. Often we want to share when there's something meaningful, like, oh, you know, we've applied for this role, or we've got this opportunity. Get really comfortable with having career-focused conversations with people around you. That way, those people can, it's like, it builds a momentum for you. And when you also do that, do it without any immediate attachment. It's not going to be that every conversation you have might lead to an introduction or an opportunity. And it could be a week, a month, 3 months later, there's something that comes back to you. So don't see it as something transactional. See it as something where you're planting seeds. And you don't know where that seed might grow or when it will sprout. And the other thing that can be so valuable in doing that, you're kind of working a muscle that becomes more and more comfortable. The more you talk about what you want to do next and what you're excited about and the skills that you're acquiring and what you're exploring, the more confident you become in yourself. So it's a win-win situation.
Win-win indeed. As we're planting the seed, so like during and after a pivot, right? Who are we continuing to speak to about goals, aspirations, opportunities? Like, where do we place that information?
I would say you could place that in a few places. One of the things that I recommend is that people start to build their sort of internal boardroom. Like, who are the people that you talk to, that you trust? So to Octavia's point, the idea of being able to tell that story and getting good at telling your story and showing that, I think it becomes indispensable. So once you make that pivot, you're still going back to the same similar trusted sources as you're adding new sources to share your ideas, to talk about your goals, to give you feedback in a different way. And I think when you start to think about who are those people, it becomes sustainable for you. And sometimes a person may fall off, but if you have the mindset of being able to build your board for where you are today and then where you want to go next, you'll always have that safe space where you're sharing your goals, your aspirations, your opportunities, and then they can also give you very candid feedback on some watch out items and some angles that you maybe need to appreciate as you make your next move.
I love that. I view that as a Napoleon Hill reference. That's good information right there. Think and Grow Rich. Hey, listen, this and all of our Digital Career Success series can be found on the YouTube channel. I know people are wondering how they can get this information that you guys are sharing, but I want to move kind of forward and speak about this freedom model that we're talking about. I guess it's a blueprint for pivots. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. And I just want to add on to the last point as well. There are also some people who feel, especially if they're pursuing a parallel track, that maybe they can't talk to certain people in their immediate network about what they want to do next because they've got a 9-to-5 or there's things that they're doing that they need to focus on. Perhaps set yourself stretch assignments to, are there any new spaces that you could move into where there are people that are doing something similar or that is for the industry that you're targeting next, and explore with that. And that gives you a safer space to also make connections that could really fuel your journey. But on the small career experiment, I actually did that myself. When I made the decision to leave behind what had been a really lengthy career in public relations and become a career coach, it began with small experiments. I literally asked people in my network, is there anyone that you know that is looking for a coach right now? And I ran mini experiments with a group of 5 people just to see what it felt like. What did it feel like to do that? Did I enjoy it? What did I learn from it? And I was doing training at the same time, so I was able to apply that training in real time into those conversations. And if I hadn't done those little tests, I wouldn't be where I am now. You know, now I've worked with companies like Google and American Airlines and Chanel to coach their people. It all began with just running just little tests just to see what that felt like. Did I enjoy it? Is that something I wanted to lean into? And then after I did that test, I was like, yep, this is it. And then I put my foot on the gas.
Walk us through that from a prep, push, pivot kind of approach. Can you do that?
Yeah, I think preparation is really important, but also we can think about every possible option. And I think it's important to think. It's good to think about, okay, what's the best that could happen if I do this? What's the worst that could happen? And what's the in between? Now, thinking about the worst allows you to get all your fears out there, right? It could be like, will I make enough money? Will I enjoy it? Or all of the things. And then think about, okay, so if the worst happens, what would I do next? Then you have a contingency plan that you can fall back on if you need to. And then there's that in between. Okay, well, it could be a mix of good and it could be bad. That's how careers are, right? For every great moment, there's going to be a struggle. So then that's where the push comes in terms of that. You've just got to make that commitment to keep taking those next steps and knowing you can course correct as you go if you need to. And we are more adaptable than we realize. One thing we haven't really also talked about is some people have a career change pretty much forced on them. It could be that, there's changes in how they work in their sector. They can't pursue what they thought they wanted to do in the same way anymore. And they're having to be nimble and adjust. And so recognizing that we have that in us, we are so more capable than we realize. And so, yes, prep, push, pivot definitely applies.
Kason, you were talking about the only thing that is constant is change earlier. So it seems like this would be a good lead-in to kind of share some of that.
I mean, absolutely. I think to this point about freedom. I mean, at the end of the day, the reality is that you are one of one. Your career is not something that belongs to someone else. You own it as a part of your brand and your movement, whether you work for someone or you work for yourself. So one of the things that I push in thinking about that freedom logic is that you have to spot your next move before you need it. Because at the end of the day, the workplace and the workforce is shifting fast. If you wait until you need a job, you're already behind. So the way I try to think about it, when I career coach, when I coach teams that I lead, when I work on things for myself, it's really going back to that point about experimenting with new opportunities to stay ahead. I mean, for the example of what I do now, as a future of work executive and working on skills strategies for using artificial intelligence and thinking about what's next for the world of work. I saw this 4 or 5 years ago as I was working in a function leading learning and development. And I started thinking about what was happening with COVID and how are people coming back to work and what are the skills and attitudes they're going to have. So even at that point, I already started preparing myself for, well, what are the kinds of skills and gaps that I have? And what kinds of experiments can I run within the locus of my control and my team? And all those things set me up to basically use what I'm doing today to anticipate tomorrow's needs before the organizations even knew they needed those kinds of things. And if you take that attitude toward the skills you have, it allows you to really unlock and even create opportunities either where you are or in the next area that you want to get into.
So you're coming to us with a learning and development lens. But if someone's on here and they're not coming from that space and you're speaking about running career experiments, kind of break that down on how they can kind of enlist that philosophy in their work.
100%. Like, so when you think about a career experiment, it could be like to some of the points that Octavia made earlier about understanding, things you're curious about and what you may want to do. One of the first steps is asking yourself, how can I work on this in what I do already? Perhaps that's taking on an assignment in your role. It's proposing a project with your group. Because again, the objective here is you're measuring twice and cutting once, in the sense that you're already using the time you have. You're just putting it in a direction of something else that you want to do and want to work on. Sometimes we don't always have that opportunity. So I would always say start where you are. But in the event that doesn't work and it doesn't fit, perhaps there are other ways that you can potentially help others. So again, going back to Octavia's point about how she got into career coaching, what did she do? She asked her network and she started helping a handful of people at a time. In the case of someone else, you could potentially volunteer, or you could ask and lean on your network and ask if they have a problem aligned to the area that you maybe want to grow and develop in, and then you can therefore help them. So these are all different kinds of examples of there are opportunities around you. Sometimes we just have to think outside of the box around how we create them. And this is why I say set the bar low, because the intention is what is the easiest thing I can do to learn about what I want to do next.
And I think another experiment that you also can run, especially if you're considering leaving an existing 9-to-5 to do something new, is run a financial experiment too. Do the math. Think about what could I potentially earn at the beginning and in the middle, and once I'm further along in this pursuit, how would I bridge the gap if the gap is substantial? Get real about those numbers. If you can, test that out for a while on that budget. Can I make this work? Because I think it's also really important to have that transparency, because what we earn also matters. There are some of us that might be in a position where we can take a leap and we can cover that gap. There may be some of us that cannot do that. And I think it's important to get real about what that would require and run experiments there too to test that out.
Okay, help me out here. So are you speaking about a pivot into solopreneurship? Or are we speaking about pivots into another career?
Not necessarily. It could be pivots into another career that you might not be earning the same when you make a pivot into another career as what you're earning right now.
Okay.
It might be that you maybe have to take a gap because you perhaps have to acquire some skills, or you're going to school, or you're investing in professional development. So that's extra expenses. And so it's important to also just understand what would it require financially also for me to make this pivot. And if you need to run some little experiments alongside that, maybe it could be doing research, it could be talking to people who work in that space, it could be looking at, salaries for those roles. And yes, if you are considering working for yourself, it's even more important to also run some of those experiments as well and crunch your numbers.
Hey, Kason, let's talk about this real quick, because you're speaking about a pivot, and I'm hearing Octavia speak about maybe acquiring some additional skill sets or learning maybe some different tools and resources that you can use to solidify or embrace your pivot. So what are you seeing out here, Kason, that people are leveraging? I know some of the AI courses, we had two brilliant speakers on last week, Ashley and Shalay, speaking about how people are leveraging AI to advance their careers. Anything that you're seeing out here right now that people might want to pay attention to?
Well, I have some good news in relation to that. If you look at some of the trends, and I believe even one of the people you interviewed last week shared a report around like World Economic Forum and all these kinds of things. A lot of the skills that companies are looking for are actually very human-centered. So it's, yes, you have to learn technology and understand a little bit more about how technology is impacting the way you work. But the skills that they're looking for that are competitive differentiators are around analytical thinking, critical thinking, all these kinds of things. These are skills that we already have. So really the main thing I coach people around is the idea of how are you doubling down on those skills and leveraging technology to help you. So you have generative AIs, you have all these other tools that can help you with some efficiencies. The way I think about generative AI in this context for anyone right now is think of it as a superpowered intern that can give you a lot of feedback. And all it's about is getting the idea around how do you build good questions. And then you look at that feedback and then you iterate against it. If you need to learn a skill, build a program or a project plan, build a routine. These are all different ways that our current technologies can help us with becoming more adept at using them. And sometimes that's happening in the workplace, but I say as an individual, you have to take agency in being able to do that for yourself. But there was actually a question that popped up that I wanted to address. I think it was from Ariel, and she was asking a question about being introverted and networking, and that it doesn't come naturally. I wanted to pause on that a little bit because I think there's a difference between networking and building a network. So when you think about the art of building a network, it's really being intentional and thinking about who may be able to help me or I can ask questions about that I feel comfortable with if I'm trying to experiment with something new. Whether it's I'm learning a new skill, do I have people in my current network that help me to do that can help me learn about it? Or do I need to expand and potentially, engage with others? I know one of the best techniques to start to build a community, going back to my point about radical curiosity, is just share stuff and have conversations with people curious about what they do. So that way it's less pressure around sharing your story, and it's more about getting curious about the work of others and getting insights from that. Because most people, if you ask for a few minutes of their time and you show interest in what they're doing, they're usually very, very happy to be candid with you and to share insights. And that always leaves a good impression. So that's something I just wanted to call back, because I think it's important, because I think sometimes we think of building a network toward our net worth as I have to go shake hands and kiss babies. And then, yes, that can be a part of it, but it's really thinking about who are the people that have maybe the knowledge or the connections you need in order to do that next thing, whether it's get into another industry or build a new skill or something else.
Yeah, so let's talk about this, right? So, you know what? I'd also like to let everyone know, please leave your questions in the actual in the chat form here. We will do a Q&A segment probably in about 10 minutes where we'll have Octavia and Kason answer all the questions that we can get to. So let's talk about this, Kason. I'm hearing what you're saying, and people are starting to navigate and let it be known that they're looking to make a career pivot. But I guess we should embrace imperfection in this process, right? Oftentimes as a recruiter, when people come to me and they're looking for new opportunities, they believe they have to be the perfect match for that particular position. And often I have to share with them, let's just leverage the skill sets that you bring that are wanted and expand on that and look at that as kind of the guiding light to the opportunity. And then we'll share a conversation about your ability to learn and acquire new skill sets and things of that nature. What are you seeing out here, Octavia, as people come into their pivots and they want to be perfect in it?
Yeah. And also, I think I saw in the chat as well, people are also worried about competition, especially if they're applying for roles where there might be people that have much deeper and extensive experience than they have. And it's an anxious time when you feel you might be competing and you're not at the same level as other people who might have been doing the work you want to do for much longer. But I think it comes back to what I was saying earlier about you've got to be ready to bet on yourself first before anyone else will. And there could be transferable skills and perspectives that you have from your current or previous work that can really add value for what you do next. You know, I spent many, many, many years working up the corporate ladder in London. And then when I moved here to Los Angeles in public relations, you could argue, well, I don't work in public relations anymore. You know, I worked as a career coach. I'm an author. I'm a tech founder. But oh, yes, I do leverage those skills. I learned so much from that time. I apply those skills every single day, even though I no longer work in that field. And so I think it's really important for you to recognize your USP. You're not a monolith. You have a USP that is uniquely yours. And for you to be very intentional about how you seek to leverage that. There'll be people that won't see it and might play it safe. And then there will be people that love that and will be drawn to that. And you've got to keep advocating for yourself and keep having conversations. If you're just comparing resume to resume, and even though I have a background as a career coach, I hate resumes. Resumes can be so tough. And we get tripped up on how do we really show who we are and what we can do well on this like one piece of paper. That's why, as Kason was saying, conversations, they matter. It can get you a foot in the door. It can build a relationship. You might find a mentor who will make recommendations for you. You know, I attended the book launch of my friend Kevin Bethune over the weekend. He's had the most unconventional career journey of anyone that I've ever met, from working on nuclear reactors to designing Nike shoes to working at Boston Consulting Group. At multiple steps, he found people who were believers and people who are ready to bet on what he can bring to the table. And so that's what you have to remember as well. And yeah, embrace that imperfection. You know, there's going to be times where it's really, really, really hard. There's going to be times where you feel like you're going backwards. You're going to be looking at LinkedIn and thinking everyone's getting ahead faster than I am, right? But you need to compare where you are from where you were before. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. Just compare where you were before to where you are now and what your next steps are going to be.
Kason, Octavia's drilling down on this career MVP piece, and I'm starting to think about your career moves and the 10 progressive promotions. I'm sure you felt some of that, maybe on both sides.
I mean, absolutely. And this goes back to what I said earlier about being able to kind of see the trends and know where things are going. And to the point of what Octavia mentioned about believing in yourself. Like I don't think about skills as hard versus soft. I think about skills as what is durable versus perishable. And to think about that in plain English, your durable skills are like your toolbox. What are the things that you can come back to over and over again, no matter where you pivot? So that's like relationship building, networking, analytical thinking, stakeholder management. Doesn't matter what industry that I've worked in, I've leveraged all those skills to a T in order to differentiate myself. And then if you think about your perishable skills, those are like your groceries. You need them, but they expire. So that might be some technical knowledge, like a coding language and things along those lines. So you need your toolbox and you need your groceries. It's just about getting really good at how you build those things up. How much groceries do you need for where you are right now? What are those tools that you really can go back to time and time again that are rare, valuable, and keep you competitive? And that goes back to what Octavia said about that idea of belief in self, about betting on yourself. It's really about the deeper your toolbox is, and you start to look at where you're working and the things that come up over and over again, you'll start to double down on those things. And then that's what really kind of helps you make those pivots. And for my own personal example, these are the kinds of things that, for me, my driver in talent and org performance work has always been, how can I help people do more? Period. That's been my why. And that value proposition has taken me from professional services into consulting, into finance, into life sciences, into technology, because people problems are always there. And being able to solve those problems with my unique value proposition of being forward thinking, being able to build those relationships, being able to bridge gaps between technology and actually getting things done for individuals is what's differentiated me as a professional and has allowed me to navigate where I want to go based on where my purpose is and where the energy is for me to do the work that I want to do. And I think it's really important, and I'll make this last point, is that you have to make your pivots work for you. It's not always just about the market. Sometimes we make pivots because of the market and we have things forced upon us. And there's no such thing as a bad opportunity. It's all about your perspective. But when you start using pivoting as a skill and as a tool, it really allows you to start to craft where you go, because not all opportunities are good opportunities at the surface. And the more you understand your why, and the more you understand your drivers, and the more you understand your toolbox, the more successful you'll be with those pivots.
So help me out here. As we speak about career pivots, and we're speaking really about the ownership of it all, right? Just making a decision that you want to pivot and acting as if it's as easy as that. But we all know that you're going to need stakeholders in the journey, right? How do we sit in front of someone that's a hiring manager, that's a hiring influencer, and basically get them to jump on board and align with us in our desire to pivot and say, hey, you're the person that really I'm placing some of my career goals on because you're working with my team. How do we convince people to embrace us as a career pivoter?
Well, the first thing to remember is if you have the opportunity to have a conversation with someone, you're in a really good place. When I have been hiring teams, when I was working at corporations, and now in my role as a founder, I don't have a conversation with someone unless I think they could do the job. And then it's just comparing and contrasting, of course, the candidates that you have in the field. So if you're having a conversation with someone, you deserve to be there, number one. And then number two, it's about really owning your story unapologetically. You do not need to apologize for what you might have done in the past or feel that diminishes you. Be ready to talk about your why you are making the shift, or why you made this shift if it's a recent shift that you have made in terms of your pivot. And then emphasize what you're going to do next and how you will add value for that employer or potential employer if it's an informational interview versus a formal interview. And convey that conviction. Your career is the most valuable and the most personal investment you will ever make. You also need to be assessing the people that you're meeting with and to understand, is this an environment that's going to support me? Does this align with my next steps a year, 2 years, 3 years from now? Does this give me the opportunity to do my best work?
Can I add a little to that as well? Is even if you think about the interview process, right? If you're applying to a job in a traditional format, like, hey, I see it online, let me go post it, you're not setting yourself up for success.
Mhm.
So really, it's like if you're interested in another industry, if you see a job that you like, what you should be doing is understanding who that hiring manager is. Go follow them. Go see what they post. Go see what they talk about. Follow that recruiter. See what they manage, what they're doing. And then you have these curiosity interactions. So it isn't about necessarily getting the job. It's about understanding what they do and building that trust. And that becomes another point of competitive differentiation because it shows your interest, it shows your value, it shows the ways that you're trying to do the work, and you can articulate that why, to Octavia's point, in a safe space where they have no obligation. So then when you go through those more formal channels, it tends to work to more so to your advantage because you've already built that traction and some of that trust through your curiosity.
So as we're talking about it, so as you're looking at like a hidden job market, right? So you're unveiling that, and we spoke about storytelling, but again, we're going to have to sit in front of someone and unlock the opportunity from our standpoint. And Octavia, I love what you say. I always share this. If someone has agreed to meet with you, they've probably seen something in your background and skill set that's of interest to them, and they think it's of value. Kason, great tips on kind of building a relationship or getting a better understanding of the recruiter, the hiring manager, prior to reaching out and even expressing interest in the job. But once we get there, how do we unlock the opportunity?
I'm happy to start with the answer. I think it's really, you really have to be able to do your homework and understand not only your unique value proposition for yourself, but your unique value proposition for the role that you're trying to fulfill. So, some things I tell people to do is like, you know what, depending on where you're working and who you're working with or for, look at annual reports, understand the business, like show that even if you're transferring into that new area of work or opportunity, that you're leveraging skills like learning dexterity and a willingness to adapt by presenting yourself and showing that you've done your homework. I mean, these are all things that I think leave a lasting impression, and also being able to ask really good questions. I think Octavia alluded to this earlier around the idea of knowing if a place is a good fit for you or not. Is you have to do that by asking questions about their ways of working and about the things that matter to you. And I feel like that full thoroughness, when you actually get the seat and you get the opportunity, it allows you to show up better and allows you to get considered for it more often than not.
Yeah. And I think I would also add that if you are having these conversations, you are unlocking opportunities, right? You're not in the driving seat of deciding if someone's going to make you an offer next week or after the next stage, but you are intentionally already unlocking opportunities if you are going after what you want, and also if you are not attaching your self-worth to the outcome of those conversations. I think that is also really, really important. Nobody else determines your self-worth. You do. If someone tells you no, or not now, or ghosts you, because, oh my goodness, that's probably more common right now, not to get a response at all, right? Versus actually even being told a no, that is not a reflection on you. Yeah. It is for us to advocate for ourselves, not just when we are hearing yeses or positive affirmations, but in the times when we're not. In the times where we're not getting responses, in the times where we're not getting interviews, that's when we have to step up and keep doing more. So you are unlocking opportunities. If you are actively pursuing conversations, applying, you are doing the things that you need to do.
So let's jump into the Q&A segment. I'm seeing some great questions here. I'm sure you guys are looking at them as well. But I wanted to kind of jump into this because I'm seeing, it seems like we may need to go back to how we started in the beginning to answer some of these questions. But I'm seeing one from Aaron here. Could you all share some examples of how you talk to your current employer about pivoting? Do one of you want to take that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take that. Now, first of all, you've got to use your emotional intelligence, right? You've got to look at the landscape. Is there a potential, and this might also be helpful if you're doing what I was referred to at the beginning as maybe a gradual shift. You're actually maybe wanting to, I don't know, you've been working in operations and you decide you want to perhaps work in marketing. I'll just use that as an example. And you can perhaps see an opportunity for you to maybe potentially sidestep towards that where you work. First of all, look to see if you can forge relationships with people who are already doing what you want to do. Is there anyone there that can be a mentor for you? Is there anyone that can give you recommendations on how you could do that? And arm yourself with as much information and ideally supporters before you have a conversation that perhaps goes into details. If you go into a conversation about, hey, I would really love the opportunity to contribute to X. This is the reason why. And as a coach, I love open-ended questions. Ask someone for their feedback. Yep. What would your thought be on this? Make it a dialogue. It's not a pass-fail test. It's not an ultimatum. It's a dialogue. Now, there'll be, when you've kind of assessed the opportunity and the landscape and talk to people that are perhaps doing this, you'll have a sense on whether this is something that'll be perceived as something that can add value. There'll be employers who could be excited to have somebody who's got expertise in X contributing also to Y.
Sure.
But you don't know until you go through those processes. So do that assessment and see it as a conversation.
Kason, I want you to jump in here. I'm looking at this question here. Best practices on pivoting during layoffs. And let's just even abbreviate that a little. Just best practices on pivoting.
Yeah. So I would say, going back to the point that I made earlier, like you have your story and you have your brand. So I think one of the things that's really, really important as a way to even build attention around what you want to do next is share your values, share your ideas, share the things you're curious about. Leverage tools like LinkedIn, not so much just to apply it to jobs, but to talk about your skills, to talk about topics that you care about that might be attractive to the employers or the people that you want to engage next. Because where the industry is headed is this idea where I call it a portfolio career. Whereas like most people, it isn't just about having that 9 to 5 as your main thing. You have to figure out as an employee, how can you start to diversify and leverage other skills in other ways? And one of the best ways to do that is by developing your own brand, because some of your skills you can monetize, and you can also still indeed have the job. I mean, I'm living proof of the fact that I work as an executive, but I also run my own coaching practice. I also have products and things like that. And these are all different slices of various skills that I've built because my career is owned by me. And in relation to working for others, it's an exchange. I give them value, but in turn, I'm still also able to do these other things. And I don't think it's about your level of expertise or your years of experience. It's about your mindset and really getting curious and working with coaches to deconstruct what are these different ways that I can use my skills. So in the event that you do get laid off, you have other options that can help sustain you.
Hey, Noah, we're going to try to shorten the answers a little. I want to get through some of these, right? So I'm going to shorten the questions as well. We have an individual that's attempting to make a late in life transition from an IT project manager to an HRIS analyst. They're just wondering if you have any advice on how they can merge the two.
I saw something else in the comments as well about making transitions later in life. And I think we also have to acknowledge that, ageism in the workplace is real. It can be really tough as, you're moving further and further in your career at the time when you've actually have such a deep wealth of experience and expertise to then also make transitions. And that's why also that self-belief piece becomes even more critical when you are worried about naysayers. And so, first of all, the question I would ask is, do you have mentors that work in the space that you want to move into in HRIS? If not, be proactive about asking people in your network about people you could have conversations with. Don't even say, I'm looking for a mentor. Just say, I'd love to talk to someone that's done this, right? Start it as a conversation. Some of the most impactful mentorships that I've had when I've made major transitions started just as a one-time conversation. Those people weren't thinking that they were going to end up mentoring Octavia, but oh boy, did they, right? That one conversation changed everything. Have as many conversations as you possibly can. What qualifications of baseline are needed for what you want to do next?
Gotcha.
How can you get those certifications? Start doing all the things that you need to do. And if you've been doing those things already, then asking your network and your mentors for introductions, ask them to bring to you ideas of conversations that you can have. Who are 2 more people that I could talk to?
Yep.
And that expands your reach.
So we have a question from Bill. He wants to know, what are the thoughts about attempting to pivot in this current political climate? Bill, I also wanted to say I appreciate you for sharing the link to a colleague at Tuskegee's Hiring. Thank you so very much for sharing just job opportunities in the chat. We like that. Thank you so very much. Any of you guys have any thoughts on the political climate and how that impacts your attempt to pivot, if any?
I'll keep it short and sweet. I say if you lock in on skills that are rare and valuable and undeniable, basically you can be so good that you can't be ignored. And you have to be able to identify those kinds of things. I think that's agnostic of the political space, in my opinion. If you are diversified, like I mentioned, there might be pathways that are direct with employers. There might be pathways for yourself. But I think if you get really good at understanding what's in demand, I don't think that's going to be driven by a political climate at the moment. That's just my 2 cents.
Octavia?
Focus on what you can control. Mm-hmm. And that's my advice whenever things are crazy, whether it's the political climate, whether it's the environment that you're in, where you work. We can have turbulence right where we are. We can have turbulence that impacts our industry. We can have turbulence that impacts the country. Focus on what you can control. Focus on you. Focus on the next step that you can take.
So we have an individual that's coming out of the spirits industry. I guess they're experiencing a layoff, or the role is actually being cut, but they don't actually offer what position they're in the spirits industry, because I know it's a huge industry and you can work in a lot of different capacities. But they're just wondering if they're not exactly sure what industry they want to pivot to, and they're asking for a suggestion. And I think this goes back to the early parts of our conversation. So I want both of you to chime in real quick on this, and then we'll go to closing remarks and kind of move out of here. But Kason, they don't know what they want to do. Talk to them.
Yeah, you got to find your why. You got to find out, like, what about what you did energizes you, and then figure out, like, where are those opportunities in other areas. I would say you worked in spirits. Let's assume manufacturing, supply chain, something along those lines. But it should come from where you start.
Love it. I love it.
I would add, who are the people you look up to? What is it about them that you admire? What is it that they do? Is it the work they do? Is it the traits that they have? Is it the skills that they're using? There might be some ideas that are just there that you just need to explore a little more.
Yeah, and I'm going to encourage you. I'm sorry, that gentleman, I think it was Ricky. I'm going to encourage you to connect with the panelists, myself, on LinkedIn. Follow the feedback. Follow the content that people are sharing, because I think you might find at least a blueprint to the direction you're looking to go in from some of the information that's shared by our panelists today. Listen, I want to thank both of you for doing an amazing job today and sharing not only your pivot stories, but also sharing advice and tips on how our audience can do a career pivot, their next move, right? So closing remarks, we're going to start with you, Kason.
I would say that, I thank you all for even thinking about the fact that you have to pivot. Just understand that the idea that pivoting is a skill, and that overall you own your career and you should take agency in that. And don't think of pivoting as a failure. Think of it as a tool for you to direct where you want to go next.
I love it. Octavia.
Yeah, I would say that, the average employee spends over 100,000 hours at work over the course of a lifetime. That's a third of your life. The work that we do matters. No one else is going to know how your career feels apart from you. And so if you're ready to make a shift, whether that's that accelerated pivot or a parallel track or a gradual shift into something new, accept that there will be a messy middle. That's okay, right? Careers are messy. They're really, really messy, and it can be really, really hard. So the fact that you're even here is huge. So just track your incremental steps, clap for yourself. When you update your resume, when you reach out to someone, when you have a conversation, clap
Yes.
for yourself and keep that momentum going and going and going and going, and you'll get where you want to be.
Indeed. Well, we appreciate you being here today. I want to thank you for joining us for the future of work. No, well, actually, I'm sorry, for next steps, career pivots, mastering career pivots. Listen, if you want to stay in touch with Octavia, please, she left a bunch of information here that allows us to stay connected to her and the work she's doing. Check out Prep, Push, Pivot. Check out How to Change Careers. You're doing some amazing work. I want to thank you for doing that work here today on the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. Mr. Morris, man, listen, 10 career pivots, making moves, doing incredible work. Tell us a little bit about, just give us the name of the book and where people can find it, please.
Well, The Life Work Revolution is the book. Just came out this past fall. It's available on Amazon and most major outlets. I also have a newsletter, The Life Work Dispatch, where I share everything about life work design and thinking about the future of work, to help you make sure that you are a step ahead and unplugging from the system and thriving in and beyond a 9-to-5.
Thank you so very much. As a future of work and skills strategist, we know you are the person to come to for the life work revolution. All right, listen, if you want to stay connected to work I'm doing, I'm Kenneth L. Johnson. I'm your host, but when I'm not doing this, I'm the president of East Coast Executive, leading diversity recruitment firm. Do not hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's connect, let's network. That's what our panelists told us to do, right? Also, visit the website to find out what's happening at East Coast Executives. All right, we are going to do this again in 2 weeks, February 26th, Innovate and Elevate. I was speaking to our guest about this today. And I'm really excited about this one as well. It's upskilling in the modern workplace. We'll do it here on the Urban League Jobs Network Digital Career Success Series. Look, I'd like to thank the Urban League Jobs Network team, Corey O'Donnell, Dave Gannon, Wanda Jackson, everybody there that makes this a really exciting and rewarding experience for me and hopefully for all of you. Thank you so very much for joining us. We'll see you in 2 weeks for Innovate and Elevate. I'm Kenneth L. Johnson, National Urban League. We appreciate you.